Hey, we want to give a warm welcome and shout out to our campuses at Silver Creek and Summit and Palm Desert. Love you guys. This is going to rock for you guys on your night. We want to welcome everyone that will be watching this on DVD on our web stream and also in the future on CD recording. Well, are you ready to get into this thing? You ready? All right, here we go. Let's everyone stand up. All right, if you have a drink or a purse or something in your hand, you're going to need to set it down. Now, the Apostle Paul said, very courageously, the Apostle Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ. He said, follow me as I follow Christ. So what I want you to do tonight is I want you to follow me as I follow Christ. Now, if you're going to be a leader, and you are, because say this out loud, I am a magnificent leader in the making. If you look over your shoulder and no one is following you, you're only out for a walk. But if you look over your shoulder and people are following you, you're leading people. And you see, it's not even an option for us because some of you might say, well, my disposition is to be more introvert and quiet. Listen, this is not about charisma and volume and glib jokes and humor. Leadership is way more than just being vocal. Leadership is about casting a light of character in the sphere in which you live. Therefore, if you're going to have people following you, there must be something for them to follow, right? Something of substance, not just charisma and volume, but something of incredible substance. So, here's what we're going to do. Tonight when we get started, and everyone that's watching on the web, all of our satellite campuses, same for you. We're going to play a little game called Roger Says. All right. Now, if you flinch or hesitate, that means you're out. Now, I'm going to demonstrate for you how easy this is. Ready? Are you ready? Shake your hands. Shake your hands out. Get nice and loose. But Roger didn't say, and all of you would have been out. Do you see how subtle that was? That wasn't quick. It wasn't clever. It wasn't coy. Now, Roger says, shake your hands out. Now stop. And you would have been out. So now, we're going to begin again. Now just stop. But Roger didn't say, and you stopped again. Okay, now Roger says stop. Okay, are you ready? Now, if you're out and you know that you are, then you just need to take a seat right where you are. We're going to go for about probably 60 seconds of Roger Says. And we'll see how many of you can stay with a fast-paced, high-octane leader. Are you ready? Are you ready? You ready at home? Here we go. All right, lift your right hand. Roger didn't say and you're out. Sit down. Okay, Roger says lift your right hand. Now put your right hand down. If you flinched, you're out. Bye-bye, Michael. Okay, Roger says put your right hand down, put your left hand up. But Roger didn't say now, did he? Bye-bye. Roger says put both hands up, now put both hands down. If you flinched, you're out. Roger says put both hands down, put both hands up. But Roger didn't say. All right, touch your head with your right hand. Roger says touch your head with your right hand. Roger says touch your head with your left hand. Put your right hand down. Whoopsie. Put both hands up. Bye, honey. Okay, here we go. Clap your hands. Roger says clap your hands. Now stop. Thank you. You may all be seated. All right. Roger didn't say. Okay, all of you that sat down, stay sitting. All of you that are still standing, stay standing. All of you that are not clapping should be sitting. You're not clapping, sir. Okay, stop, enough. Roger says stop clapping. Sit down, we're all done. Roger says sit down. Here we go. All right. So now, you can stop clapping. You're ridiculous. You're hilarious. I love you people. You're my peeps. You see, leadership is all about being copyable. Write that down in your book somewhere. You have your notes at the end of this section or somewhere by initiative clarity. Leadership is about being copyable. You must be able to reproduce you in the lives of others while letting them maintain their individuality. Did you follow that? You must be able to produce copyable results in the lives of others while letting them maintain their individuality. Because you see, leadership is not about making clones. It's not about cookie cutting someone and insisting that they navigate with the exact same. Do you know what's a little bit creepy? When you go some places and you see the leader and everyone else is wearing the same kind of glasses, the same kind of shirt, the same kind of shoes, they posture the same kind of way, and if you close your eyes, you swear to God that you're listening to the other person because they're talking just like the leader. Leadership is not about reproducing someone in a clone fashion. It's about helping someone discover how Jesus has made them and then let them be free to express who Jesus made them to be. I've heard so many people say I've heard a lot of girls say to their husbands, "Why can't you be more like Roger?" May I just tell you, that's the kiss of death. Not only are they not going to like you, they're not going to like me. So stop it. I've heard some of you say, "Why can't you be less like Roger?" That's not such a bad suggestion in many regards of my life, as my wife would attest. Leadership is about being copyable, but having people be able to copy what? The principles, right? Because repeat it with me. If the principles are in place, the particulars take care of themselves. That's why we're covering in this first quarter, right? This is the first quarter of 4 quarters of Team Camp. We're covering 10 principles that are absolutely essential for people to be able to copy us. We've gone over 6 character principles where you must have absolute what? Clarity. It must be clear. We've talked about visional clarity, relational clarity, ethical clarity, educational clarity, stewardship clarity, and value clarity. Well, tonight, with the first one of Team Camp, we're going to be talking about initiative clarity. Initiative clarity. You've probably noticed that there are people in your sphere in which you live, and you look at them and you go like, wow, that person has great initiative. And you probably see other people in your sphere of influence, and you look at them and you say, man, that person's got 0 initiative. And then you see people in your sphere of influence, and you'll say, they have marginal initiative. And all of us are somewhere on that continuum, but listen to this. We're at different points at different times in our life. There are times when we have great initiative. For example, when it comes in to be about March or April, what do you become motivated to do to your garage? Nothing. My wife nags me and I don't want to do nothing. Right? There's that time of year when spring cleaning comes along and you think like, man, I just got to get that stuff clean. But that doesn't happen like January. Unless you're odd. And there is therapy for you if that is the case. These are 10 characteristics of achieving leaders that we will be walking through over the course of this first quarter. The first characteristic, the first principle that we'll talk about tonight is initiative clarity of achieving leaders. So number 1, jot this down. They are ambitious and they want amazing. They are ambitious and they want amazing. Now mind you, that's going to manifest in a way that is going to be consistent with how you are dispositionally wired by God. Your sense of being ambitious and your sense of wanting amazing is not going to manifest like my way of manifestation. It's going to manifest how God made you when it manifests. Now, if it's not manifesting, guess what? This is something that you can still work on. This is something that you can initiate. Well, I'm not much of an initiator. Therein lies the issue. Initiative quality. What does it look like to be ambitious? Here's what it looks like. They are ambitious and they want amazing. And why shouldn't they? They consciously choose to live their best life. Would you circle those two words? They want to live their best life rather than spending their life on autopilot. I think tragically for me, as I've led people for 25 years in pastoral ministry, I've observed people that have come to a point in their life where this thought settles in their head. It's as ungodly and demonic and unholy as any thought that you can imagine. Pastor, you probably shouldn't share that here. Yes, I should share it here. It's the exact place where I should share it, and I'm going to share it right now. Are you ready? Some of you are nervous, I know, but it's okay. Here's the thought. This is as good as life gets for a person like me. That is the demonic, hellish, ungodly thought that runs rampant through the heart and the minds of many people. People look at the quality of their life or the lack thereof and make an assessment of how low they must soar and fly based on how they have navigated and conducted their life. Because many people that you know, no one here in this room or watching on the web, but you know people that have blown up their life. They have train wrecked their life. They've made poor decision after poor decision after poor decision, and they come to the conclusion, this is as good as life gets for someone like me. I rebuke that thought in Jesus' name if it's remotely in your heart. It has nothing to do with God's glorious intention for you as a leader in the making. It has nothing to do with what God has intended for you. Nothing. They are ambitious and they want amazing. Dear one, please don't settle. Please don't settle. Now herein lies the conundrum, right? Because the Apostle Paul says, I have learned to be content in all things. So we begin to contrast, well, what does it mean to be content and what does it mean to want amazing? That would be a fair question, would it not? Here's the difference. People that are drawing identity and value by what they desire are not wanting godly amazing. They're wanting carnal amazing. People that are deriving esteem, value, and worth by what they possess and what they desire. I feel good if I have a Ferrari. I feel bad if I have a bug. I feel valuable if my house is 4,000 feet and on a cement slab. I feel bad if my house is 700 square feet and has wheels. I feel good if my wife was the prom queen. I feel bad if... You get the picture. When people want amazing for their own sense of validation, it is not godly. When people want amazing for the purpose of letting Jesus shine through their life so that it becomes a witness and a testimony of God's best in your life and having them be desirous of that, that's spot on gospel. Right? Romans 15, chapter 20. Romans chapter 15, verse 20. Listen to the words of the Apostle Paul. Just listen. I want everyone to close your eyes. Don't open your eyes. They're watching at our satellite campuses and on the web. Just close your eyes and listen as I read this. The Apostle Paul, 5'7". He has a condition of a dripping eye sore that has been a thorn in his flesh physically. He's balding. He's hunched over. His feet are tired. He's beat up. He's been shipwrecked. He's had rocks thrown at him. He's absolutely fatigued from pushing this gospel message. Now listen to the words of the Apostle Paul. My ambition has always been to preach the good news where the name of Jesus Christ has never been heard, rather than where the church has already been started by someone else. You can open your eyes, Roger says. Do you hear the heart of an ambitious want amazing leader in that verse? He wants so desperately for Jesus to be glorified through him. When you want desperately for Jesus to be glorified for you, if you're a chiropractor, you should be the best chiropractor as under the Lord that this planet has ever seen for God. If you're a meat cutter, you should be the best meat cutter that any grocery store has ever seen for God. If you're a cheerleader, you should be the very best cheerleader that anyone has ever seen for God. If you're a surgeon, you should be the very best surgeon that anyone has ever seen for God. If you work construction, you should be the most gracious, glorious construction worker that anyone has ever seen for God. You see, as you begin to do that, you begin to build initiative clarity. Because many people have had ambition, have they not? Have you ever heard of anything called subprime mortgages? Ever watched the movie called Wall Street? There are people that have had ambition, but they've not had initiative clarity because their ambition has been carnal and not spiritual. And that's how you measure it. Is your initiative quality based on carnality, your lower nature, or spirituality, your higher nature? What is your ambition based on? Right? And those are the things that you should be writing down and getting in your heart. Number two. Is that true? If that's true, say, hoorah! Woohoo! Fighting soldiers from the sky. Number 2, they don't procrastinate and they don't spend their life waiting for the right time. They don't procrastinate. They don't spend their life waiting for the right time. So many people are so cautious. Dear one, I'm all for prudence. Really, I am. Some of you might think like, man, you are a crazy Mach 1, hair on fire, Top Gun flying pilot. That's how I got this way. Follically challenged. But let me just assure you that my fiscal principles are as conservative as anybody you've ever met in your life. I do not take chances, but I absolutely take risks. Do you understand? It's what Jesus would compel you to do. Jesus does not want you to take chances. Jesus wants you to take risks. I could never lead a small group. It's so intimidating. That's taking a risk. He wants you to go out on a limb. I could never, ever share the gospel with Jesus Christ. I could never tell someone. I could never invite somebody to church. It's just too scary. Here's what we do. We wait for all the conditions to be right. We never ask out that certain someone on a date. Why? Because, well, there's just too many people in the room, and it's only 78 degrees instead of 74 degrees, and I'm waiting for the wind to blow from the southwest and from the northeast, and I'm waiting for her hair to be parted on the left instead of the right. We are waiting for all the conditions. I could never start that business because the economy is so bad, and it's just so scary, and what if it failed? What if it succeeded? What if you change the landscape of your world and someone else's world by giving employees a job? What if you created an open door for other people to live in a godly environment of a business opportunity where you are the pastor of those sheep in your flock? There's a movie that came out about a naval aviator. And this naval aviator went to Top Gun in Miramar, California to learn how to fly jets as fast as they could go. But he had a pretty bad crash that really wasn't his fault, but because he was in the number one seat, he owned the responsibility of that crash, and his friend lost his life. And when he got back into the number one seat, he was afraid to engage the enemy. Watch this clip with me.
in there. Engage.
All right, you got a bogey at 2 o'clock low, Maverick. You got the angle. Piece of cake, pal.
Take the shot, kid. Take the shot.
You can engage any time, Maverick. Hey, where the hell are you going?
It's not good. It doesn't look good.
What do you mean it doesn't look good? It doesn't get to look any better than that.
Did you see the fear in his eyes? Don't you let the fears of yesterday impact your risk-taking for tomorrow. Don't you let the fears of your yesterdays impact the risk-taking of your tomorrows. The time will never be more right for you to risk for God. Look at Proverbs chapter 6 and verse 4. I like this out of the Message version. It's pretty simple. There are our satellites in here and across the web. Let's read it out loud together wherever you are. Ready? Here we go. Don't procrastinate. There's no time to lose. Do you know that there are no minutes, there's no moments that are guaranteed to you past the one right now? Oops, that one's over. It's time for you to start living your best life now. Number 3. They look for and find opportunities. People with initiative clarity, right? These are all people with initiative clarity. They look for and find opportunities when others see nothing. They look for and, listen, they're not just looking. These people with initiative clarity, they're not just looking. They look for and they find opportunities where others see nothing. In 1853 through 1856, the Russian Empire was fighting the British Empire. And there was something called the Crimean War. It was incredibly expensive for both sides to fight. And the Russian Empire was losing its grip against the British Empire. The nation of Russia approached the United States and said, "We have a piece of property we would like to sell to you. It's a little bit north of your northern territories. It's connected to Canada, but we don't want Canada to have it because they're connected to Britain. We want to sell it to you." That little property, Alaska. 2/3 the size of the continental United States. So this negotiation was undergoing, and I believe that, someone can correct me if this is wrong, but I believe it was William Seward, who was the Secretary of State. Seward, it was Seward, right? Who was brokering this deal. Well, something arose to get in the way of that little land deal. Something known as the Civil War. So through 1860, through 65, there was a shutdown of this negotiation. After the Civil War was over, Seward, who had never been to Alaska, went on a fact-finding trip. And you know what he saw? He saw the Aurora Borealis. He saw the prisms. I mean, how many of you have ever been to Alaska? Raise your hand. Wow, you people are cool. All right. How many of you have seen the Aurora Borealis in person? Does that just blow you away? Is that just amazing to see all the colors in the sky? The land of the midnight sun, how the earth, the sun never gets below the horizon for a period, and then it does never come up for like 5 or 6 months. But Seward went to Alaska, and he saw something. He saw a barren wasteland. He was mushing on dog sleds. He was excurting all through Alaska, and he saw something that no one else would see. He went back to the capital of Russia and began to broker the deal with Seward. It was an all-night meeting. And on March 30th, 1867, Alaska was purchased from Russia for $7.2 million. I've done the math. That's 2.3 cents per acre. Oh no, it gets better. Because 1896 rolls around. The Klondike Gold Rush. Now, I've done some calculations, and this took me about 2 or 3 hours to figure all this out. So I'm going to share it with you whether you like it or not, because I put all the time in, so you're going to hear it. Since 1896, more than 2.5 million ounces, 2.5 million ounces have been mined from the Klondike alone. Not to mention all the oil reserves. We're not even going there. 390 tons of gold from the Klondike alone. That's 12,480,000 ounces. Today, gold is trading at about $1,300 an ounce. If you were to amortize this out over the cost of inflation and calculate it as being fairly consistent over the last little while, that's $16,224,000,000. Seward saw something where no one else would see anything. And the reality of what he saw, guess what? It was a good deal. Dear one, don't you be so quick to give up and judge and categorize people. Because you know what I know? There's gold in them dar hills. Say this out loud with me. There is gold in me, yet mind. See, that's the whole thing about initiative clarity. You have to believe that the best stuff in you has yet to come to the surface. You have to begin to believe. Now, this is not just hype you up, pump you up. We're going to pump you up. No. This is not just that artificial stimulation of motivational mumbo jumbo. This is what Jesus believes to be true about you, his precious sons and daughters. And it is what you have to believe when you look into the face of someone else. Do you know what I know? Here's what I know. That when everyone walks into this church, they instantly get assigned a 10 above their head. Instantly. There's an instant 10. Many people do this, and I don't know if you even realize that you do this, but you do this. If you're in a patch quilting club and you see someone who's clumsy with their scissors, you give them a 6. If you're in a poker club and you're playing Texas Hold'em and the guy has the big blind and no one has raised it and he folds his hand, you give him a 4. And people have these numbers, don't they? We do this. Come on, nod your head at me if you know that's true. We have these numbers that we assign over people's head. Unless you have initiative quality that's godly driven, you assign people with 10s and make them prove you wrong. See, that's what godly leaders do. Godly leaders do that. Number 4. I like this. They don't believe in or wait for fate, destiny, chance, or luck to determine or shape their future. They believe in and are committed to, circle the words believe in and committed to. They believe in and are committed to actively and consciously creating their own best life. May I just tell you that socialism has never worked, is not working now, and will never work. Communism has never worked, is not working now, and will never work. Because when you take the human spirit and reduce it into a handout, give me something mentality, you have crushed the spirit that Jesus has innately put in the heart of every person, irrespective of democracy or continental boundaries or historical points of view or gender or race or socioeconomic reality. God has put the human spirit to be creative after his own image. And people that are so desperate for somebody else to do something for them have swallowed a lie. You've just swallowed a lie. Because you know what? My God shall supply all my needs according to his riches and glory. My God. Not my gov, my God. I'm going to get a political call, I know that. Look at Matthew 25. Matthew 25, 21 through 29. The master of a large estate went away. He had 3 guys, and he said, take care of my stuff. I'm going to give you a certain amount, you a certain amount, you a certain amount. He addresses the first guy and says, well done, my good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in handling this small amount, so now I'll give you more responsibilities. Come, we're going to party, come on, no, Thresta, all night long, Lionel Richie, all night, yeah. That's how I read the Bible. It's just so musically in tune. The servant who had received the 2 bags of silver came forward and said, Master, you gave me 2 bags of silver, and I have earned you 2 more. The master said, well done, my good and faithful servant. You've been faithful in handling this what? This what? Small amount. So now I will give you many what? More responsibilities. Let's party together. Then the servant with 1 bag of silver came and said, Master, I knew you were a bully. You were a tough guy. And you're harvesting crops where you didn't plant and gathering crops where you didn't cultivate. I was afraid I'd lose your money, so I buried a hole and put it in a Folgers can. And look, here's your money back. The master was ticked. You wicked, lazy servant. If you knew I harvested crops I didn't plant and gathered crops I didn't cultivate, why didn't you put the money on the bank where at least you can make 0.3% interest? Right? There's still some interest, although it's negligible. There's some. Let's read verse 29 out loud together wherever you are. Here we go. To those who use well what they are given, even more will be given. Do you understand? That's not Roger giving you an emotional pick-me-up. That's the heart of Jesus talking about how well you steward what he has put in your hands to take care of. Use it or lose it. If you do a lot with a little, he'll let you do a lot with a lot. If you don't do a lot with a little, you won't get to do squat. There's a book. It's a fluffy book, and I'm gonna admit it right now. It's just fluffy. But add it to your library, maybes. It's a bestseller, and some of you may have heard of it. But Joel Osteen wrote a book called Your Best Life Now. And if you haven't read that book, I really would encourage you to read it somewhere in the course of your journey, because he has a bunch of really cool stories in there about people who did just that. And I think that we need to expose ourselves to at least a new way of thinking, yes? Okay, number 5. Number 5. They have a big engine. They work hard, and they are not lazy. People that have initiative clarity and that achieve at very high levels, listen, it is across the board discernible. Now again, having a big engine does not necessarily equate to volume and charisma. You can be a quiet, silent assassin. Ninja warrior. People that have initiative clarity and that achieve at very high levels, listen, across the board, I've seen it, I've documented it. Biblically, you can see it. You can see it in the Bible. People that did things for God listen, God doesn't call the most qualified. He qualifies those he calls. Do you understand? Some of you feel so disqualified before you even have a chance to get out of the gate. Well, I'm not very learned about the Bible. Heck, I don't even know where the book of Job or Paslams is. God does not call the qualified. He qualifies those he calls. You should write that down, because that has to do with you. God does not call the qualified. He qualifies those he calls. In Romans chapter 12 and verse 11, I like how this reads out. Never be lazy, but work hard and serve the Lord. How? Do you love that adverb? Do you know what an adverb is? Enthusiastically, with great joy, you should serve the Lord. And you should work hard and be glad at it. Don't grumble and grouse and complain. There's no reward coming for negative getting a job done. Have you ever seen people that look like they had about 8 ounces of lemon juice, rushed out and did something for God, and feel entitled? Don't kid yourself. God loves a cheerful giver. God loves a cheerful server. God loves people that work with enthusiasm. And you know what? Really, truth be told, if you start funneling your thoughts through a spirit of enthusiasm, the whole world begins to change for you. The whole world begins to change for you. Jake and I, my son, my 16-year-old son, we were in Honolulu, and I was speaking at a conference there for Mike Kai at West Oahu, Foursquare Church. So we were at Waikiki, and we went and we rented mopeds. Kind of a cool story because, you know, it's illegal to rent a moped unless you're 18, but there are ways around that. Would you like to know how? No? Yes? Thumbs up if you want it. Thumbs down if you don't. Plug your ears. Okay, here it goes. So I would go to a place, drop my credit card, sign up, and I'd ride off around the corner. Jake would hop on that bike. I'd walk to another place, drop a credit card, sign up. So we'd have to bring I'd bring two separate bikes back. But Jake and I were on the mopeds, and, you know, it's just silly, but, you know, forgive me, I'm still maturing and I'm not there yet. So Jake and I are on these mopeds, and we're riding up around Diamond Head. We get around Diamond Head, and then I said, hey, let's go to Sea Life Park. He goes, cool. Well, I don't know if you've ever been on that road to Sea Life Park. The shoulder is that wide. And have you ever seen The Wizard of Oz? We got these little mopeds, top end speed at 35 miles an hour if you weigh $115. If you're a bigger boy like me, top speed is about 18 going up a hill. You ever see Dumb and Dumber? Whoa! Well, those flying Hawaiians ain't too patient, let me just tell you. That whole shaka hang loose bra. You're in their way, they're buzzing around you. So Jake and I were just going up this hill, and he weighs, you know, a lot less. Gets up the hill, top of the hill in front of me, and I'm just like, And God was teaching me something. I haven't figured out what it was yet, but when I discover, I'll let you know. I know you all got to figure out. You're smarter than me. Good for you. I know you got that. But I went back and got a Harley. Let me just tell you, it's a lot more fun with a bigger engine. Let me just tell you, when you're living your life for Jesus with a big engine, the joy of serving Jesus is glorious. When you're serving Jesus with a small engine, it's laborious, tedious grind. It's a grind. And that is not the way Jesus intended you to live your life for him. All right. Now, there's a little exercise on bottom of page 21. Are you guys doing these exercises? Are you walking through them in your book? If you're doing the exercises, lift your hand and wave at me and say, yep, Pastor, I'm doing them. Hold your hand up high. Okay, about 7 of us. I would like you to please be doing the exercises as your homework because you're doing your small group, right? You're talking about it after this class is over. All right. But we're going to do this one together because here's a little exercise I want to give you as a gift. You'll see this little graphic on the bottom where it says assessment. I want you to find a healthy range of hard work. That's it. That's the object of this lesson. I want you to put an X on the scale with what you feels like too little or too few hours that you have worked, that you should work, all right, in a work week, right? I love that scene in Dumb and Dumber. Yeah, there's no jobs in the city. Yeah, unless you want to work 40 hours a week. I think Dumb and Dumber is a very important part of this curriculum, so go ahead and feel free to rent that and watch it as part of your homework. I want you to put an X by where you think it's just, in a typical work week, if you think it's too few, put an X there. Then I want you to go down that continuum, and if you think, you know what, if I'm working this many hours, that's just flat out too many hours to work. I want you to put an X there. Okay? Now, right in between those two X's, I want you to make a little fulcrum, like a little teeter-totter, like a little teepee, a little pointy thing. Right in between those two X's. Okay? Somewhere to the left or to the right or the pinnacle of that little teepee is probably about the right amount of hours how God has wired you, where you probably ought to be working. Now, if you're putting 11 hours as too few and 30 hours as too many, let me just tell you, is that good? This is good stuff? How'd the team feel? All right, all right. Turn over to page 22. Get a piece of the rock. I know, with your legs, I know. That's why I have a slip disc in L3. The next characteristic, and the last one we'll talk about tonight, is something called evaluative clarity. Evaluative clarity. Now, what in the world, you probably have never heard that word, it's probably because I just made it up. Evaluative clarity. Many people are living their life without a hint of assessment. What kind of a husband am I? What kind of a wife am I? What kind of a son am I? What kind of an employer am I? What kind of a son or sibling am I? What kind of a daughter am I? How do I know? What kind of a neighbor am I? What kind of a church member am I? People are living with full throttle realities. How many of you know that that's true? We're living our life accelerator to the firewall. We're mashing that thing down. And we're exhausted and tired. You know what? You need to not live your life that way. And the thing that's really going to help you have a parachute to your thing called life is the ability to have evaluative clarity. You have to be able to evaluate this thing called life. Because if you don't, write this down somewhere. If I don't evaluate, from the mouth of babes. A little girl in the top row said, I do, in case you were wondering what they said at home. For those that don't evaluate, you'll never be able to make course corrections. If I don't evaluate, I can't make course corrections. If you think this thing called life is a straight road, there needs to be a paradigm shift. If I don't evaluate, I can't make course corrections. If I don't evaluate, I can't make course corrections. For example, married people, wave at me. Okay. Tina and I married 22 years. Each Monday, here's what we do. Ready? 3x5 card, black ink. Prepared on Sunday. Home run, base hit, strikeout. I sit down with Tina, she sits down with me. We're not impassioned, we're not mad, we're not volatile, veins aren't sticking out of my neck, there's not saliva coming out of my mouth, my incisors are not showing. We're just having a conversation, and we're evaluating our marriage. Where's my home run? Where'd I hit it out of the park? What's my base hit? And what was it? Where am I swinging for the fences and missing it? Right? I know I've said this before, but I want you to get this. There's a way of thinking that you need to capture. Single people, wave at me. Wave, wave, wave. Okay? Some of you are looking around going, whoa, I didn't know you were single. Wow. Where's Tyler? Where's Tyler? Tyler, stand up. Take off your hat. Take off your hat. That's a good-looking single brother right there. All right. Cat call's coming. Here we go. All right. I want to give you fundamentals for evaluations, not just pragmatics and nuts and bolts, but some philosophies to work through. Because how many of you know it's important to have a philosophy of life? You really need to have a philosophy about your pragmatics. You need to know what you believe and why you believe it before you start believing and put it into execution and practice. Before you start executing, you need to know what it is that you believe and why you believe it. Right? It's called apologetics. What do I believe and why do I believe it? Okay, so here's the first reality. Number one, high-achieving leaders of evaluative clarity, they rarely complain. Do you hear that? They rarely complain. All complaining does is put the complainer in a negative and unproductive state. Michael Cunningham is a PhD at Louisville University. And he's done some very interesting, you might want to write his name down, Michael Cunningham, PhD, Louisville. You can Google his name and get some cool stuff. He's a cool psychologist. I had to study him when I was getting my degree. Michael Cunningham has stated that people complain 20 to 30 times a day. Be careful, you're going home with her. At least 20 to 30 times a day. Or you're talking about yourself. Oh, I got it. Okay, good for you. Way to man up. People complain on an average of 20 to 30 times a day. Do you realize that whenever negative energy or negative words come out of your mouth, you're refuting everything that this book represents? Every time anything negative ever comes out of your mouth, you are refuting everything that God's word stands for. Every time. As I read the New Testament, never once do I hear Jesus complain. Never once do I hear him say one negative remark. Never once. Do you think he felt entitled and justified in doing that? I think he did. Why do people complain? I'm going to tell you what Michael Cunningham said. People complain because of unmet needs. You've heard me say it this way, and I'm going to say it again 1,000,000 times. Hurting people hurt people. Right? Hurting people hurt people. On the other side of the coin, healthy people help people. And not by anything they do, but just by something that I call, quote unquote, the ministry of presence. Do you know that every person has a pheromone? I don't think I know what that is. A pheromone is quite literally an odor that you emit that's indigenous or unique to you. Every person has a pheromone. And it's kind of interesting because, you know, that pheromone, when a certain other gender walks by and they get a whiff of that pheromone without cologne, by the way, you don't need 14 ounces to enhance your pheromones. Whenever someone walks by, it's intoxicating to a person, and that's the first, other than the ocular realities, the fragrance comes in, and that's the hook, the pheromone release. Do you know that every single person that has Jesus Christ living in their heart emits a pheromone? People that don't have Jesus Christ living in their heart cannot emit a spiritual godly pheromone. Not possible. But everyone who has Jesus Christ living in their heart, they emit a pheromone. And when people go through difficult, challenging times, listen, I have just met with people today, plural, going through divorce, going through bankruptcy, going through separation, going through child abuse, going through financial bankruptcy and hardships of losing their home and foreclosure. I've met with people just today in those areas. And you know what? There's a brokenness, there are tears, there is sadness, but there's a sweetness. Why? Because of evaluative clarity. Because they understand that even though they go through those broken, hard times, that Romans 8:28 is very clear. God works all things together for the good of those that love him and are called according to his purpose. That's not on your book. Romans 8:28. It ought to be tattooed on the inside of your eyelids and just chiseled on the sternum of your soul. God never wastes a painful experience. We might, he won't. People have unmet needs, and that's why people start complaining. You know what the greatest unmet need is? A relationship with a higher power called Jesus Christ. It is the core of unmet needs. Now, once people have that relationship with Jesus Christ, guess what? You still have other emotional, psychological, and relational needs that have to be ongoingly met. It's kind of interesting what Abraham Lincoln, as you read the Gettysburg Address, and I've read it at the mall there in D.C. Amazing. Do you know the Gettysburg Address was a rewrite? It was rewritten literally hours before the original speech. That wasn't the original Gettysburg. It was a rewrite. Something that was more impassionately on his heart. I love what he said shortly after the Gettysburg Address was concluded. Here's his quote. "If you look for the worst in humanity, you will surely find it." It doesn't take a prophet to find a problem. I perceive thou art a prophet. This sucks. I believe. Hey, wow, where do you get that insight? Wow. You're amazing. Number 2. They're multi-dimensional, amazing, wonderful, complex creatures. Some of you have just not understood deeply how incredibly, wonderfully, and fearfully made you are by God. Psalm 139 says, we are knit together in our mother's womb. We are fearfully and wonderfully made. People with evaluative, godly character understand, they realize that they are not only physical and psychological beings, but they are emotional and spiritual creatures as well. They consciously work at being healthy and productive at all levels. Now, I am not an artist, and those of you that have been in my art classes know this to be true. Those of you that are on that side of the room, you're going to need to look at the screen. Those of you that are on the camera here, keep the camera right here. All right. That's supposed to be a triangle. Keep the camera over here, please. Can't see it. Okay. Is there music being played somewhere? Can we see that? Is that better? All right. You remember your basic geometry? This is called an equilateral triangle. And why is it called an equilateral triangle? Well, if you have a good artist, all three sides are equal. Right? Now, in an equilateral triangle, there are three realities that must be balanced in your life in order for your life to have balance. If you're going to have evaluative clarity, because you've heard me say this a million times, I'm going to say it a million times more. Perception, go ahead. Perception is reality, but sometimes perception can be our deception. Perception is reality, but sometimes perception can be deception. What do you mean by that, Raj? Well, in 1491, it was a definitive fact that the earth was flat. Science, right? That was science. She blinded me with science. Science! In 1491, the earth was flat, uncategorically irrefutable scientific facts. But then, sit right back and you'll hear a tale of three faithful ships. And Christopher Columbus refuted the perception of reality because reality was not only perception, that perception was deception. People were deceived into thinking that something was true when in fact it was not true. Do you understand? So, in your life and in my life, there are three sides of your life that must not only be in operation, write this down, not only in operation, but also in balance, in an equilateral triangle reality. If you're going to live a life of evaluative clarity, you must absolutely have balance spiritually, physically, and relationally. How balanced are you? Do you have only two legs on your table? Do you have one leg on your table? Come on. Have you ever tried to stand like this for all day long? If you're going to live in balance, you need three sides of your life to be in operation and in balance. Okay, so I want you to look at your book here. You can see this. If you have a highlighter or an underliner, I want you to underline the bullet there where it says spiritual, physical, and relational, where it equals devos, equals workout, equals date days. So in Pastor Roger's life, every day I'm doing my devotions. That means I'm going through my read-through, which we have available online in our bookstore. We have it, you can get it anywhere, reading my Bible, putting God's word in me. Guess what? That day, my nutritional need for spiritual sustenance has been satisfied. Each day, I'm going to break a sweat and get my heart rate up. And I'm going to work out because physically, I just need to do that. Relationally, with my wife, who is the most important person in my life, we're going to have a date day at least once a week. And there will be terms of endearment and her love language that is met at least 3 times a week. In Roger's life, there is an equilateral triangle where the components are satisfied and they're satisfied in balance. Do you understand? If you don't have those 3 things, it'll be like the old V8 commercial. Some of you have no idea what that means. The old V8 commercial used to be people were leaning to one side and walking down the street, and they were looking like, and the tagline said, "Oh, you should have had a V8, right? Because then you're walking upright and blah, blah, blah." We're going to go to the next one. There's not a number 3 in this book because I goofed. Number 4. Team's all right. The team's confused, huh? You know what I love about evaluative people is that they're solution-oriented. They're solution-focused. They're solution-focused. They're solution-focused. Not only are they not complainers, they are solution-focused. If you're going to have evaluative clarity in your life, it is important that you look to find solutions. Because like I said, it doesn't take a prophet to see a problem. You don't have to have some kind of special discernment, spiritual gift, or holier-than-thou insight to see problems that are going on in your life. It takes nothing of unique character development or skill set just to be pissy and moany and groany and just to see the problem in front of you. Did he just say that? Yeah, I think he did. All right, all right. Now, on the heels of that, there's a movie that came out in 1960. It was the first of a Disney series of non-animation, first of its kind. And when I came across this film, I was kind of giggling about the hyperbole of the stereotypical hell and brimstone fire pastor that's preaching this negative sermon. And then I was really intrigued by the little 8-year-old girl who only wanted to play the glad game. Because she came across a bunch of people that were fed up and hating Sundays. They were miserable. They had no solution. They were negative. They were complainers. But this one little 8-year-old girl had evaluative clarity. She could evaluate the situation and turn it with a little game called the glad game. Let's watch this together.
Listening to this discourse will soon be visited by this covenant of darkness. Come in your knowledge of God, secure your well-being. Yet who could suffer the agonies of that ghastly tomorrow? Yes, even today. I mean, the next hour, the next minute. And we'll to know which of you it was, what an awful sight it would be. A soul doomed to the everlasting bottomless pit of a divine wrath. Yes, death comes unexpectedly. Amen.
Reverend.
From the peas.
Folks just
Go away.
hate the coming of Sunday because of him.
Do you know why I hate Sunday? Because it means the starting of another week.
That's true.
That's when you can play the glad game.
Here it comes. Miss Goody Two-Shoes is going to find something about Sunday to be glad about.
Oh, lay off her, Angie.
Stop it.
If you knew how to play the game, then you could find something to be glad about, too. But you don't.
All right, Miss Smarty Pants. What's so good about Sunday?
Well, there's always something. You can be glad because...
Well, because what?
Because it will be 6 whole days before Sunday comes around again. Huh?
Aren't you glad we don't have to live like that at our church, huh? Genesis 34, 1 through 16. One day, Dinah, the daughter of Jacob and Leah, went to visit some of the young women who lived in the area. But when the local prince Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite, saw Dinah, he seized her and raped her. But then he fell in love with her, and then he tried to win her affection with tender words. He said to his father Hamor, "Get this young girl, I want to marry her." Soon Jacob heard that Shechem had defiled his daughter Dinah, but since his sons were out in the fields herding livestock, he said nothing until they returned. Hamor, Shechem's father, came to discuss the matter with Jacob. Meanwhile, Jacob's sons had come in from the field. As soon as they had heard what had happened, they were shocked and furious that their sister had been raped. Shechem has done a disgraceful thing against Jacob's family, something that should never be done. Hamor tried to speak to Jacob and his sons. "My son Shechem is truly in love with your daughter," he said. "Please let him marry her. In fact, let us arrange other marriages too. You give us your daughters for our sons, and we'll give you our daughters for your sons, and you may live here among us. The land is open to you. Settle it here and trade with us, and feel free to buy property in this area." Then Shechem himself spoke to Dinah's father and his brothers. "Please be kind to me and let me marry her," he begged. "I will give you whatever you ask. No matter what the dowry or gift you demand, I will gladly pay it. Just give me the girl as my wife." Now imagine, your sister has been raped. And here's the man that raped her asking to marry her. And your blood is now at 211 degrees Fahrenheit. And you just want to execute that no good so-and-so. Right? As should be. But you can't act harshly, because if you revert to just blind rage, your whole family is going to be annihilated. They said to them, "Oh, we couldn't possibly allow this because you're not circumcised. It would be a disgrace for our sister to marry a man like you." Look at verse 15. But here is say it out loud. If every man among you be circumcised like we are, we will give you our daughters and take your daughters for ours, and we will live among you and become one people. Do you want to know what kind of influence Shechem had? He persuaded every single man in that village to drop his drawers without anesthesia and have surgery. And while every man was recovering from his wounds, Jacob and his brothers went in and annihilated the entire city. Reciprocity. Payback is a bummer. You see, people that have evaluative clarity are able to keep their emotions in check. They're able to not just fly into a rage. They're able to not lose composure in a given situation because they're able on the spot to evaluate, to not complain, and be solution-oriented. Listen, I know in your homes that there are difficult things happening in the very life of your house. And you know what God would have you do? He would have you be not a part of the problem, but a part of the solution. Do you understand? In every dating relationship, there's difficulties and challenges. God would have you be part of the solution. In every marriage, there's difficulties and challenges. God would have you be part of the solution. Number 5. They are secure. People of evaluative clarity. Well, there counts me out. I can never have that their characteristic. They are secure. They do not derive their sense of worth from what they own, who or what. Write down that, or what. From who or what they know, where they live, or what they look like. And then underline this. Security is a process. You might be a very insecure person right now, but I've got good news for you. That's only your starting point, not your stopping point. Do you understand? If you're dealing with a confidence problem, God is looking for you to be part of the solution of your perceived problem of confidence. And then know this, that it's okay to start right where you are. Some of you might say, "Oh, I'm going through hell, I'm going through hell." May I make a recommendation? If you're going through hell, keep going. Don't stop and take pictures. Just keep going. Because at the end of hell, well, you're going to find the beginning of the road to heaven. People that have evaluative clarity are secure. They don't get their sense of worth from what they own, who or what they know, where they live, or what they look like. Because security is a process. In Jeremiah chapter 23 and verse 24, this is what the Lord says. "Don't let the wise boast in their wisdom. I'm wicked smart." Or boast, or the powerful boast in their power, or the rich boast in their Benjamins. But those who wish to boast should boast in this alone, that they truly know me and understand that I am the Lord who demonstrates unfailing love, who brings justice and righteousness to the earth, and that I delight in these things. I, the Lord, have spoken. You need to reread this verse when you get home. Okay? Do you understand? Do you understand? You need to reread this verse when you get home. You want to know what the Lord delights in? The Lord delights in you understanding that He alone is the sovereign giver of all good gifts and power, and that you know Him, and that should make you feel good about you. Because if you know Him, you are miles ahead of those who don't. And if you know him, you are miles ahead of those who kind of know him. Do you know what breeds insecurity? Comparison. Write that down. Comparison breeds insecurity. Go ahead, write that down. Comparison breeds insecurity. And you know who does it? All of us. Pastors compare at conferences. So, Pastor Roger, how many did you have on Easter? Oh, really? You don't say? Well, yeah, we had a slight bit more than that. We had, I've watched pastors do this. Parents compare at coffee shops. My little Johnny just made academic All-American. How did your little Johnny do? My little Susie in the homecoming court. How did yours? Oh, she didn't get nominated? I'm so sorry. Parishioners compare at the corner market. Did you hear what our church is doing? That pastor is so wonderful. Right? It's true. We compare. We compare. And you know what comparison does? It breeds insecurity. It just fosters insecurity. Write these 3 words down in big letters. Very big letters. Sing another's song. Those 3 words. Sing another's song. What do you mean by that, Roger? In 1 Samuel chapter 18, verses 6 through 8. When the victorious Israelite army was returning home after David had killed the Philistine, right? David and Goliath. Know the story? Familiar? 5 foot 8 inch, dripping wet, $145, nothing, mama's boy, David. Takes slingshot, sinks a rock, 9 foot 6 inch, 480 pound Goliath. Kills him, cuts off his head. When the victorious Israelite army returned home after David had killed the Philistine, women from all the towns of Israel came out to meet King Saul. They sang and danced for joy with tambourines and cymbals. This was their song. Saul has killed his thousands, and David his 10,000s. When Saul heard this, it made him very angry. What's this? He said. They credit David with 10,000s and me with only thousands, and next they'll be making him their king. So from that time on, Saul kept a jealous eye on David. You know what's crazy? If Saul had joined in the song with the women, he would have had a loyal follower in David all the days of his life, and the house of Kish would have sat on the throne of Israel instead of the house of Jesse. King Saul would have been king forever. Jonathan would have been the next king, and David would have not been in the picture. But because Saul refused to sing another's song, humble himself, he did not have evaluative clarity. He was evaluatively muddy with his window. The window of his soul could only see jealousy in that he was being credited for less than his young little servant, David. You see, what I practice consistently in my life, when I'm around other pastors, I find something. I don't lay it on thick and become like weird. Because you know how that can be disgusting. But I just find a pastor and find a characteristic, and I'll just brag about them behind their back. Around my staff, I will just not in a, flamboyant or loud way, but I'll quietly talk about one of our staff members that are just doing wonderful, and I'll just talk about it. See, we have a wonderful youth pastor in Chad. He's getting world notoriety all over the world. People want him to come here and come there. I just sing his song. We have a wonderful worship pastor who just is known all over the world from his music. And not only Mark, but also Luke. I just praise them. Our children's pastor is a professor at Northwest University. She won Alumni of the Year, the youngest ever to do that. I just praise her and sing her song. You see, when I light the candle of someone else, that doesn't diminish my own light. When you light someone else's candle and make their candle bright, your candle does not become dull. It becomes part of the bigger picture of light. It doesn't come brighter by itself, but by those around, the light becomes bright. May I just tell you that people that have evaluative clarity really understand that. They're able to evaluate the success of others around them and then just sing their song. Sing their song. Sing their song. You are greater in the eyes of God than you are in the eyes of yourself. I don't know if you know this or not, but you're greater in the eyes of God than you are in the eyes of yourself. And the best version of you has not been mined out yet. There are still Seward-type tons of gold in you. And but honey, listen to me. You're getting there. Team Camp is mining those things up. And by the time you're done with this, you are going to be 99.9% purer than what you were when you started. How do you feel about that? You ought to feel good.